Hey everybody, Rosematter here. Welcome to part 6 of my Higurashi When They Cried Tsumihoroboshi Let's Play. In the last episode, the club members had kind of a weird bonding moment over, discovering Rena's murders. They kind of let everything out, and they all seem very close and have agreed to kind of keep this a secret and help her out. It was kind of weird, but kind of heartwarming at the same time. But, while it seems to have kind of been wrapped in a nice, neat little bow, of course, that's not how it's going to be. Rena obviously not doing so well, considering she killed two people. And those bodies might be discovered. At the end of the episode, it was hinted that, there's going to be some activity in that area where she buried the bodies. People are going to be digging some holes. It's only a matter of time. Oishi's talked to her about the murders of Tomitake and Takano-san, so police involvement here, it's not going to go well, I imagine. So we're going to continue on, and we're going to see what happens in the story next. First of all, I wasn't very close to Mio-san. I knew who she was, so I greeted her whenever we happened to pass by. But that was about it. I never really talked to her except for the one time. And that one time was only recently. It was between the day of the Watanagashi festival and the day I was caught in the act of burying two corpses by Keiji-kun and my other friends. She probably said something weird to her, because she always does, like she seems to know more than she should. I had a phone call from the library that evening, and I was told that my father needed to return the book he borrowed. He was shopping at the home improvement store at the time, so I went to the library to return the book for him. While I was there, I thought about borrowing some books for myself, and I started walking around the library. I saw her there, or she just wanted to talk about Oyashiro-sama, and we know Rena strongly believes in him, so...
あら、レナちゃんじゃないかしら。こんにちは。
ミオさん、どうもこんにちは。図書館で会うなんて珍しいですね。
そう？私にとってみれば、あなたが図書館にいることの方が珍しいんだけどね。
She smiled in the very attractive and charming way that only mature women can do. Her smile gave no indication that she knew her death was just a few days away. She said she often meets with Tomitake-san at the library. It seemed like she had some time to kill, so she told me she wanted to buy me a drink. I had nothing to do after that. I let her buy me a canned ice milk tea from the vending machine in the library, and we talked for a while. Once I came to think about it, it was a little ironic. She mostly talked about the series of mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa. She had no idea she was going to be the victim of its 5th year.
連続開始事件ですか？
あら、聞いたことくらいあるでしょ。4年前にはダムの現場監督、3年前には北条夫妻、2年前には古出夫妻、そして去年は聡子ちゃんのおばが犠牲になったhinamizawa村連続開始事件よ。それがあと何日かで5年目を迎えるじゃない？
一応私もそういう物騒な名前で呼ばれていることは知ってますけど、でも5年目も起こると決まったわけじゃ。
起こるわよ。絶対にね。2度あることは3度あるってことわざがあるけど、4度あることは5度あるって方がもっと確率は高いとは思わない？
Mio-san was convinced that the 5th mysterious death was going to happen, but she didn't know she was going to be the 5th victim. That's ironic, and also really creepy. But there was always something creepy about her. So maybe she knew that she was going to be killed in a few days, but still managed to make that mysterious smile. A series of mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa. Of course, I know about it. I've lived here for more than a year. Well, it's kind of like Rika's acting normal, but she knows she's going to die soon, too. Every year on the day of the Watanagashi festival, one traitor to the village dies mysteriously. It's been that way since the dam conflict. Each case was solved individually, but mysterious incidents still happen every year. It makes me wonder if there's some kind of will to all this. The creepiness and incomprehensibility of it all gave rise to the name, the Curse of Oyashiro-sama, which fit perfectly. Despite this, I always thought the Curse of Oyashiro-sama was just a series of coincidences. My reason for that is because I strongly believe that Satoshi-kun was the one who murdered his aunt on the 4th year. I don't have any evidence, but I just know it. I know Satoshi-kun was in a serious predicament last year, and that he had nowhere to turn. He had no one to help him, but he had to save Sadako-chan as soon as he could. Satoshi-kun thought it through and made the best choice he could to handle the situation, just like I did when I had my problem with Rena. I hesitated to inform Mio-san that Satoshi-kun was the murderer on the 4th year, so I just listened to her for a while. According to her theory, the series of mysterious deaths isn't just a set of coincidences, but is instead a series of interrelated murder cases. At that point, my theory was completely the opposite of hers, but I decided not to cut in.
Hinamizawa の親代様信仰は知ってるわよね。
Takano-san started telling me that Hinamizawa was once called Onagafuchi. She also explained the story of how the villagers were in the old days, showing me the scrapbook she was so proud of. The villagers back then were called man-eating demons, but they were also admired as transcendents, enlightened people not bound by earthly desires.
つまりミオさんの説によるならば、連続開始事件はお社様を崇拝する信心深い団体がひなみ沢に潜んでいて、お社様の力を世に示そうとしているということなんですか？
信心深いというか原理主義的というかは紙一重だけどね。明治以降村の名前がひなみ沢に変わって以来、鬼ヶ淵村が長く続けてきたさまざまな風習が途絶えている。それをよみがえらせ、再び鬼ヶ淵村の名と威風を取り戻そうと思っている人たちがいるんじゃないかしら。
Mio-san's theory was more than a little crazy, but it was also fascinating. At first, her theory had sounded like she was just jumping to conclusions, but after she eagerly showed me the documents she'd been studying, I started to think it actually wasn't too far from the truth. If her theory was true, it would mean that the accidental deaths of the Hosho couple in the 2nd year, the suicide and death of disease of the Furide couple in the 3rd year, and the drug addict murderer in the 4th year were all cooked up. It would mean someone who had a lot of power and influence over the police was involved. When I pointed that out, Mio-san nodded in agreement, and she started talking about how strongly they were rooted in the village, and how deeply they were involved with many public organizations. After she finished explaining all that, I finally noticed that Mio-san was suggesting that the 3 families, including the Sonozaki family, were the masterminds behind the murder incidents, but as I think we learned last chapter, if we can believe this at face value, where Mion said that Oreo and the Sonozakis, they aren't actually the ones who are doing anything. In fact, the Sonozaki family really is very powerful. They hold influence not only over Hinamizawa and Okinomiya, but also over the entire Shishibone area. It might not be wrong to say that they even hold influence over the entire prefecture. If the Sonozaki family is behind all of this, her theory would be more realistic. But that means I should be suspicious of Michan. No, I shouldn't. But in fact, Michan was very cold and unkind to Satoshi-kun when he was going through a tough time. I know there was conflict between the Sonozaki family and the Hojo family during the Dam Wars, but still, she was very cold to Satoshi-kun. But Michan admitted that what she did was wrong, and I forgave her too. I didn't want to think about that again. I decided to change the subject because I knew it would make me feel uncomfortable if we kept talking about the Sonozaki family.
そもそもお社様信仰って一体何なんでしょうね。鬼と人が共存というのも面白い話です。普通の昔話だったら鬼が来たら退治してやっつけるという風なのに。
そうね。そのあたりがお社様信仰の面白いところね。でもそもそも神の国から神が漂着してきて崇められるというのは決して珍しいことではないのよ。漂着神崇拝って言ってね、世界中に海の向こうからあるいは川上から神が漂着してきて、 それを人々が敬ったという類の神話が残されているわ。
それは偉人漂着の話でしょうか？
そういう捉え方も一般的ね。古代日本は大陸に比べるとさまざまな文化が遅れていた。だから進んだ文化を持った異国人が漂着した結果、その知識を敬い神と祀ったという。
そういえば日本に伝わる赤鬼や青鬼もナンパして漂着した異国人のことを指すのではないかという説がありましたね。天狗のいわゆる真っ赤で鼻が異様に高い顔も欧米人を見慣れない古代の人々が作り上げたのかもしれないし。
あら、レナちゃんもなかなか鋭い見方ができるわね。それには私も同感よ。大方の漂着神信仰の原点は私も偉人漂着にあると思うわ。でもそうだとすると、鬼ヶ淵村の鬼が現れたとする漂着神信仰にはちょっと不思議な点がある。わかるかしら？
わからないです。
簡単よ。鬼ヶ淵村には海がない。
あ、確かに。
偉人漂着なら外の世界とつながる接点が欠かせないはずよ。欧米なら異国に通じる川、日本なら世界に接する海。だから日本における漂着神崇拝もそのほとんどは沿岸部に集中するわね。
鬼ヶ淵村以外に漂着し、そこから旅をしてここまでやってきた可能性はありませんか？
ところがお社様信仰の決定的なところは、鬼が漂着した場所を鬼ヶ淵沼とはっきり特定している点なの。鬼ヶ淵沼には何も流れ着かない。そんなところになぜどこから漂着したのか。実はこの辺にお社様信仰の謎を探る面白さがあるのよ。お社様の伝説はどの程度知ってるかしら？
学校に置いてある絵本で読んだ程度です。
I feel like I know a lot about it, but I actually don't. I just have an extreme fear of the rule not to leave Hinamizawa. After all, my life went wrong after I left. I felt dizzy when I tried to think about it further, so I stopped. When everything went wrong in Ibaraki, I met Oyashiro-sama, and he told me to go back to Hinamizawa. No, no, no. I'll get dizzy. Don't try to remember. Don't try to remember. I can't remember. I can't remember. I got desperate because I felt responsible for the divorce. I just used Oyashiro-sama as an excuse for my mental instability, and I told my father I wanted to go back to Hinamizawa, right? But wait. Oyashiro-sama did come to me. Oh no, the colors are too dazzling. I can only remember the vivid color of the pills and the dizziness.
それだけ知ってれば十分よ。鬼ヶ淵より鬼が湧き出し、それを見かねたお社様が降臨して鬼たちを平服させたわ。鬼たちは地獄を追放され、行き場がないことを嘆き、それで村人たちは鬼たちを気の毒に思って村に住まわせてあげようと決めた。そしてお社様は村人たちの心に感銘を受け、鬼たちに人の姿を与え、村に共存させたという。その血は次第に交わり、村人たちに溶け込んでいった。
そうです。そういう話だったと思います。
I felt dizzy like I was going to faint because I touched the one memory I didn't want to.
神話の多くは古代の何らかの事実を原型にしていると言われることが多いんだけど、
She probably regrets taking that drink from Takano, knowing that Takano was like, oh great, I've got someone to talk to about this, so let me just like talk about it for like an hour.
レナちゃんはこの神話から何を読み取れるかしら？
Because I was still feeling dizzy, all I could do was tilt my head quizzically. It seemed like Mio-san was expecting that response, because she smiled. Looking satisfied, she successfully made me confused. She took a scrapbook out of her paper bag.
これレナちゃんに貸してあげるわ。
ありがとうございます。
And she did that with Shion too, right? She let her borrow her notes.
でも私、
いいのよ。暇な夜長にでも思い出したら読んでくれれば結構。
I mean, for all we know, like Takano talking about fundamentalists and whatever, it sounds like she is like the main one. She's just spreading the word of Oyashiro-sama.
レナちゃんは鋭いところがあるみたいだから、それを読んだ上で今度じっくり議論を交わしたいわね。私も肯定的であれ敵対的であれ議論の相手がいなくて寂しいのよ。二郎さん、こういうのにはさっぱり興味のない人だし。
I had little choice but to take the scrapbook. Apparently, Mio-san came to the library often, so I figured I could return it to her whenever I came to return my books. However, the day I'd return the scrapbook to Mio-san never came.
どうしたの？さっきからうつろね。体調悪いの？
あ、ちょっと夏風邪気味ね。まだ病み上がりなんです。
It wasn't the summer cold that was making me feel dizzy. I always get dizzy when I try to remember the time I met Oyashiro-sama in Ibaraki. I mustered all my courage and asked her. My memory of those days in Ibaraki is blurry. I know I met Oyashiro-sama. Nobody believed me, and they told me it was a hallucination. But I thought Mio-san would listen to me.
ミオさん、今度は私の話を聞いてもらってもいいですか？
いいわよ。聞いてもらったお返しに今度は私が聞くわ。
いえ、お社様の話なんです。笑われないかとても不安です。
笑わないわよ。あなたも私の話を笑わなかったもの。
Mio-san said it in a very gentle and mature way, and that encouraged me. Even so, I still hesitated to talk, but there was probably nobody but Mio-san with whom I could talk about something like this. I gathered my courage again and spoke.
私、お社様に会ったことがあるんです。
本当に？
はい、私、小学校に上がる前まではHinamizawaに住んでいたんです。それが母の仕事の関係で茨城に引っ越したんです。この意味はわかりますよね？
わかるわよ。Hinamizawaを離れてはならないというお社様の禁忌に触れたということね。
そうです。それでいろいろ悪いことが起こって母が離婚し、家庭はぐちゃぐちゃになりました。私も自暴自棄になって悪いことをしたりしました。
辛いこともあったのね。それで？
世の中の何もかもが嫌になって、自分以外の幸せな人たち全部が私を見下しているように感じた最後の頃、不思議な存在が現れるようになったんです。
それがお社様？
初めて現れたのは内緒ですよ。全部嫌になって自分を壊してしまいたいと思って、体に刃物を突きつけたことがあったんです。
I think that's my first time hearing about that.
その時、首をカミソリで切りつけたら、血に混じってブクブクと汚らしい何かが溢れ出したんです。それは、
バカにしないわよ。続けて。
The chill I felt at that time came back to me. I sealed that memory away so that I wouldn't have to remember ever again. But once I unsealed it, I started remembering things one after another. Yes, back then, there was something in the blood, something crawling.
赤黒い
Ooh.
無数の何か。それらは首から血がこぼれるのと一緒にわらわらと湧き出してきました。しかもそいつらは外へ溢れまいと傷口から再び中へ戻っていこうと、わらわらって。
Now here's where you think, did this actually happen or is this psychosis, Because there are boy, I can't remember what I listened to something about this where it's people, they feel like they have like bugs under their skin and they will actually like cut into their skin and pull things out, like fibers and things that they think are bugs, and they truly believe it. So like is that what this is, or is this something supernatural?
私そんな気持ち悪いのに体内に戻られたくなくって書
Oh.
きました。首の傷を引っかいてほじくり出そうとしました。
Oh my gosh, is that what happened to Tomatake?
でもそれ以上は痛くて血まみれになるばかりで、それで私は急に怖くなりました。私の体の中には血管いっぱいにあの気持ち悪いのがぎっしり詰まってるんじゃないかって。それで私は試しにカミソリで股の血管を開いてみました。そこならよく見えると思ったから。そしたら溢れてきたんです。ドバッとわらわらっと。
I understand, Riku-san, so please calm down.
分かってないってば。そいつらは血と一緒にドバッと溢れ出すけど、すぐに元の血管の中に戻ろうとする。それがとてもかゆいんです。
Please bring a doctor. No, don't clot it like that. Bring me a sedative. Hurry. Hold her down.
私の血管の中のやつをやっつけて血を全部抜いてきれいにして。私の血管には変なのがいっぱい詰まってるの。どうして信じないの？見せてあげるから。見れば信じるでしょ。注射は嫌。いや。
Damn, Rena. Wow.
落ち着いて。
Mio-san sat next to me and held my hands tightly. Her touch brought me back to reality.
それでどうしたの？
そんな誰も私のことを信じてくれないときに、お社様が。
The memory was very vague, and I saw flickering lights. It made it difficult for me to remember. I met Oyashiro-sama. That sentence is all I remembered. The memory of actually meeting Oyashiro-sama was unbelievably vague. After I got out of the hospital, I continued being treated at home. I still felt something moving in my veins, so I wanted to cut my body to make the blood ooze out so that I could make sure there were no maggots in there. Usually I was sleeping like the dead because of the strong pills I was taking. But one day, I forgot to take the pill, and my consciousness was very clear. I felt the maggots moving in my veins, and I felt the urge to look inside. I cut a vein on my wrist. Ugh. I knew it. A lot of blood and many dusky red maggots came out from the wound. I wanted to wash them off before they crawled back inside me, so I put my wrist under running water in the bathroom sink and I tried to open the vein. Ugh. Water, blood, and maggots ran down into the drain. Just like squeezing out the pus from a pimple, I squeezed the vein to get rid of the dirty blood and the maggots. I kept doing it. My arms started to feel numb and I felt cold, but I kept doing it. I thought I might die from losing too much blood, but I kept doing it. My body was filled with maggots. I had to squeeze all of my blood out of me. Oh god, it's so descriptive. And then a very bright light shone upon me. It was a very bizarre sensation. I had never experienced anything like it in my life. All of a sudden, the dark bathroom was filled with a bright light. It was very bright but gentle. It wasn't like the light from the merciless fluorescent bulb. It was very warm and gentle. That was Oyashiro-sama. Oyashiro-sama was looking at me with gentleness and sadness in his eyes. As he touched my wound, the maggots started melting and disappeared in front of my eyes. That wasn't all. All the maggots that were moving throughout all my veins disappeared too. Oyashiro-sama taught me. These maggots were the curse. People of the demon's blood can't live outside of Hinamizawa. It's the rule. Unfortunately, you've been cursed. It's very sad, and I feel sorry for you. There is only one way to save you. That's what he said. What should I do? The answer was very simple. All I needed to do was go back to Hinamizawa. I unconsciously knew that before I heard it from Oyashiro-sama. People who were born in Hinamizawa must never leave. But I broke Oyashiro-sama's rules, and I left Hinamizawa. That's why my family was broken, and I lost my mind. If I hadn't left Hinamizawa, nothing would have gone wrong. And so I had to go back. Oyashiro-sama also told me this. He could make the maggots, the embodiment of the curse, disappear, but only temporarily because I lived far from Hinamizawa. After a while, the power of Oyashiro-sama would fade away, and the curse would start eating my body again. If that happened, the maggots would take over my body, and I would go insane and die. I must go back to Hinamizawa before his power to hold down the curse faded away. That's what Oyashiro-sama told me. He did. I heard him tell me that. I should have gone back to Hinamizawa earlier. That's why Oyashiro-sama came to me to put his curse on me. But he gave me a chance. He gave me a chance to pay for my sin of leaving Hinamizawa. Dad, listen. Oyashiro-sama is going to help us. Let's go back to Hinamizawa. Hinamizawa is the place where we must live. If we don't, not only me, but you might be cursed too. Let's go back to Hinamizawa. That's the only place where we can live. We need to hurry. We need to hurry, or Oyashiro-sama's power will fade away and my body will be eaten by the maggots. Oh no, Oyashiro-sama's following me. He's telling me to hurry. He follows me everywhere and keeps telling me to hurry. He keeps apologizing to me for putting his curse on me. He follows me everywhere and keeps apologizing. Oh, there's the apologies again. I'm sorry, right? I'm telling you the truth. I am. Why can't anybody see it? Why can't they see the maggots or Oyashiro-sama? Everybody's trying to fool me. I know they can see them too. No, please stop. I don't want to get another shot. Damn.
落ち着いた?
Yeah, I obviously I don't believe that she truly has maggots in her skin. That's some sort of trauma is, she's having these visions. But maybe I'm wrong about that, who knows? I'm speaking like I know for sure, but I don't. I was breathing hard and Mio-san was holding my shoulders. I could feel the terrible memory I'd been trying to forget was awakening. The doctors told me the memory was just my delusion. They told me that since I blamed myself for the divorce, I unconsciously had a desire to blame someone else for it, and I unconsciously connected the desire to the folktale of Oyashiro-sama that I read when I was little. I got drug treatment, received counseling, and waited. I gradually got better, and that proved the things I saw were just a hallucination. The doctors asked my father to consider moving to Hinamizawa if possible. Why do I have a feeling she's going to be seeing those maggots and she's going to dig into her skin again because, I don't know, she seems like she's okay with what she's done with killing, Rena and Tepe, but it's like she said, it's a horrible thing she's done, and whether they were bad people or not, it's like she's still gonna suffer from it, from knowing what she's done. Fortunately, he wanted to change his living environment to heal his pain from the divorce as well. So we came back to Hinamizawa. After we came back to Hinamizawa, I felt it. I felt it in my bones that this was the place we should live. And I also felt Oyashiro-sama's blessing. I definitely felt it. I felt the curse of Oyashiro-sama starting to break. I was free. After I moved here, I went to the clinic in Gogura for a while. The doctor gave me the same poisonous-looking pills, and I kept taking them for a while. The terrible memory gradually became unclear. Whenever I tried to remember it, I could only remember the strong side effect of the pills, and it made me dizzy. That's how I regained my peace. And then I changed my name, Rena. The reason was because my name reminded me of those bad memories. I didn't want to have anything icky in my life anymore. That's why I came up with the idea of taking icky things out. After I took the I of icky out from my name, Rena, there was only Re and Na left. Or Ray and Na left. That's how Rena was born. I like that. When I was introduced to my classmates, I told them to call me Rena. Since then, that has been my name. I'm living my new life as Rena. I cut away all the sad things that happened when I was Rena. My father still calls me Rena, but I don't feel bad as long as it was just my father and my relatives. But then Rena came into my life one day, and she called me Rena. Because she called me Rena, those colored lights started flickering again. I should stop. I should forget about it. The lights were still flickering.
すみません。私、だいぶ取り乱してました。
小声で何かつぶやいてたわね。落ち着いたならよかったわ。
Judging by Mio-san's reaction, I wasn't panicking as badly as I thought I was. But I've probably had those panicked hallucinations several times. If I started screaming and yelling like I once did, they'd take me away to a hospital again for sure.
私は、あの異常な中で、確かにお社様に会ったんです。もちろん、不気味な何かも。信じられませんよね。
Mio-san smiled, looking a little confused. I couldn't blame her. I didn't expect her to believe it. I gotta think, she is a nurse, so she's probably used to hearing people say things like this. So maybe she's just trying to like, okay, I'll go along with this. Or maybe Takano really does believe like, oh yeah, I believe you. I'm sure it was just a strange memory I created for myself in my hallucinations. I can't believe I can't trust myself. That's the worst feeling of all.
レナちゃん、まず一つ安心してほしいの。
はい。
レナちゃんが怖がっているたたり、つまり血の中にいたという変なもの、それはお社様が言うにはHinamizawaにいる限りは大丈夫なんでしょ？
ええ、そう言ってました。
なら怯えることはないじゃない。安心して。あなたは今Hinamizawaにいる。まあこの図書館は沖宮だけど、このくらいの距離ならお社様も許してくれるわね。血管の内側に何かが騒いでいるなんて感じないでしょ？
それは、はい。
だから安心して。あなたは今お社様の戒律をちゃんと守ってる。だから何も恐れなくていいの。だってそうでしょ？ね？
はい。はい。
I didn't know until then that she was such a warm-hearted person. I met many doctors and talked to them about this, but they always ignored me and didn't really listen. All they did was give me a shot of the drug I hated. On the other hand, Mio-san didn't deny my story or the existence of Oyashiro-sama. The people in this village whispered behind her back that she's a little crazy. But she was actually a very kind person, I thought.
レナちゃん、私は今の話全部信じるわ。
ありがとうございます。そう言ってくれた人は初めてかもです。
それは私も同じよ。
So she believes the maggots as well, or is she just telling Rena that to kind of like calm her down?
私の話をバカにしないでちゃんと聞いてくれた人はあ
It
な
could
た
go
が
either
初め
way.
て。
I feel like it could go either way with her.
私たちいい友達になれそうね。
Mio-san smiled, touching my head with hers.
な
Oh.
ら私の秘蔵のファイルとスクラップも貸してあげるわね。本当に本当の門外不出。私以外の誰にも見せる気がなかったんだけど、レナちゃんには特別に読ませてあげてもいい気がするわ。
Which I think she said something like that to Shion too. It's like, oh, you just say that to everybody.
あなたならバカにしないでちゃんと読んでくれそうな気がするし。
She took a few scrapbooks out of her paper bag and handed them to me.
ぜひ読んで感想を聞かせてね。あるいはひょっとするとレナちゃんにしかわからないことなのかもしれない。
Mio-san was acting mysteriously. She smiled mischievously and put her index finger on her lips as a sign to keep it a secret.
あとこのスクラップ帳と私がそういう研究しているのは内緒よ。
内緒ですか？はい、わかりました。
だってこんな研究をしているのが連中に知られたら。
She laughed after she said that. They might erase her. That's what she said. And she went missing. She left me her scrapbooks. But that's not all there is to it. It's the way Tomatake-san died. Oishi said he committed suicide because of a state of excitation caused by using some kind of drug. But I know what really happened. I didn't tell Oishi-san about it. I don't think he'd have believed me even if I told him. Without a doubt, Tomatake-san died trying to get rid of the maggots. It was nothing other than the curse of Oyashiro-sama. Okay, that's interesting. So, There's the shot that Rika had, that she got injected with, and then she killed herself that way. But then now there's this thing about the maggots. To never leave Hinamizawa isn't the only rule of Oyashiro-sama. There are more. He might have broken one of them without knowing it. Oishi-san told me. Tomitake-san was taking pictures with his camera flash on during the sacred ritual dance. Some people got mad at him for it. Did Oyashiro-sama put a curse on Tomitake because he violated the sacred ritual dance? It might be for another reason. Anyway, he died from the curse of Oyashiro-sama, without a doubt. Did that mean Oyashiro-sama put his curse on Mio-san too? Investigating the gods is the same as getting close to the gods. It's disrespecting them. But Mio-san told me that they might get rid of her if they found out about her investigation. By they, she meant humans. Plus, according to her theory, the three families are in a conspiracy to revive the faith of Oyashiro-sama. But I can tell by the way Tomitake-san died that it was an act of the curse. I'm certain about that because I experienced the curse myself. And at first glance, that seemed incompatible with those conspiracy theories about human beings. I remember that Oishi-san told me something about some kind of drug that can make a person commit suicide. So, do the three families have a secret drug that can cause the curse of Oyashiro-sama? That's impossible. Plus, I didn't get any shots of a suspicious drug like that. I had a normal life in Ibaraki. I wasn't involved with the Sonozaki family or the Kimiyoshi family. Oishi-san asked me a favor. He asked me to tell him secretly if I saw or heard anything suspicious. It could be about Mi-chan, Rika-chan, or anybody in the village. Mio-san believed my story about Oyashiro-sama. Now she's gone. Tomitake-san died by doing the same thing I did. Oh, no, 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 no. I don't want to get involved with the curse of Oyashiro-sama. Is this a conspiracy of a group of fanatical cult members, or is it the curse of Oyashiro-sama? The question we still don't fully have an answer to. Is everything just a set of coincidences? Or maybe it's a mixture of a conspiracy and the curse? I don't know. Is it the work of humans, the curse, or coincidence? Oh, Rena, I am in the same boat as you. Oh no, even the light of the sunset was making me feel dizzy. When did the sunlight in Hinamizawa get so mean? Mio-san told me to keep her investigation secret. I have her top secret scrapbooks. They might hold the truth about everything. When I realized that, I got scared all of a sudden. I might end up the same way as Mio-san because I have her scrapbooks. If it's a conspiracy, I'll be erased. If it's the curse, I'll be cursed. I should burn the scrapbooks. That's the safest thing to do. But Mio-san believed my story. Mio-san listened to me without laughing. It would feel wrong to burn them without taking a look. If it's a conspiracy, I have to expose it, just like Shion. If it's the curse, I have to break it. I shouldn't run away. I should fight. That's right. I decided to fight to seize my happiness. I shouldn't give in to misfortunes. I have to fight. I'm going to get rid of all the things that are trying to ruin my peaceful life. I'm going to read her scrapbooks when I get home. I started walking faster. Alright, lunch takeout list. It seems a little bit of a swerve from what we were talking about before. Attention, Kuroda Mental Clinic. Okay, never mind. Mental Clinic. Hello. To get straight to the point, we can assume this is an acute case of post-traumatic stress disorder. The patient is subjected to tremendous stress because of her parents' sudden divorce and being forced to choose to live with either her mother or her father. Furthermore, the patient firmly believes she was responsible for her parents' divorce, which further drives her to self-mutilation. The patient's largest shock stems from a sense of betrayal of her own household, which she believed was an absolute safe haven. Henceforth, there is a high possibility the patient will resort to psychological defense measures to protect her family. For example, she might feel high disdain for any person of the opposite sex who approaches her father. She might feel uncomfortable about having other people in her home. Oh, so maybe they're going to dig up these notes on, once they find out that Rena's missing, and maybe they'll close in on Rena, suspecting her of having something to do with it. She may also display erratic behavior in order to keep people away from it. As an example of the latter, there were reported cases of patients unconsciously bringing home garbage. It's highly important that the patient remains in close communication with her father. By deepening the communication between the two of them, it'll strengthen their family bond and loosen up her anxiety. And why do I have a feeling something's going to happen to her father that might, push her off the deep end? Since the patient only shows signs of an acute syndrome in this case, there's a very good chance she'll recover within 3 months with her father's support and proper medication. However, it's common for a patient who seemed to have recovered to have a sudden reoccurrence, a flashback, even after 10 years. Her father is still fairly young, and there's still a chance he could remarry. However, seeing an unfamiliar member of the opposite sex through remarriage could trigger a flashback in the patient, which may lead to avoidance behavior or hyperawareness. Please explain this part thoroughly to the father in order for him to understand the recovery process. Should the father decide to remarry, it's recommended he should hold off in telling the patient until she reaches the age where she's capable of living independently. Also, the cause of the patient's psychosomatic self-mutilating behavior, delusional parasitosis, seems to be its own culture-bound syndrome. The patient blindly believes that leaving her home village will cause a curse, and that this curse was the cause of her parents' divorce. We believe this is a subconscious defense mechanism to reduce her mental trauma by shifting the blame from herself to her village's curse. According to the patient's statement, the culture of her home village is extremely strict and exclusive. The patient believes there's no way to be saved from the curse, other than by going back to the village, as the curse will continue as long as she lives in her current environment. Through this, we see an inclination of schizophrenia and believe the chances are high the patient will continue to alter their perceived reality. Schizophrenia, a case where patients' personalities are reduced, causing altered perceptions of reality and delusions. Her delusion about the maggots dwelling in her blood is a perfect example, and it's also the cause of her psychosomatic self-mutilating behavior. When a delusion involves psychosomatic self-mutilating behavior, it's extremely dangerous. I highly recommend for the father to move back to the village if he's financially capable. Allowing her to live with relatives in the village might also work. If such a strong belief can induce symptoms such as self-mutilation, then there might be other cases similar to this one. Perhaps prior medical files that document similar culture-bound syndromes may be available at a large medical institution in her local area. It'll then be possible to provide better and more accurate mental care for the patient by obtaining these case files. This B5 size letter was with a bunch of memos. The following was on the backside of the letter. And there's the lunch takeout. 1 chukadon, 3 Shanghai-style gomuka yakosaba, 1 large fried rice. So the father knew that remarrying when she was still living with him could have been a bad idea, and he still almost went through with it, which I'm like, I feel for the father, but I'm like, that was maybe not a great idea. About homing ability and homesickness. If you interpret homing ability in a broad sense, you can say that most animals have a homing ability. It's the same with humans. We like to sleep, rest, and eat at a place where we feel comfortable, namely our homes. Your home is to you what nests are to animals. Therefore, we can say that humans have a homing ability as well. First of all, why do animals need nests? The answer is the same as for humans. Sleeping, resting, and eating are the essential actions for survival. At the same time, those actions leave one defenseless as well. That's why you need a safe area where you can be defenseless. Everybody knows that not having this safe area results in a high level of stress. When you move an animal to a new environment, it naturally becomes stressed. When you force a person to live in a foreign land where they aren't comfortable, they become greatly stressed as well. Everybody also knows that this kind of stress is called homesickness. The Japanese don't know much about homesickness. We defined it as mental weakness, and we neglected to treat it for a long period of time. However, homesickness has a very long history. In Europe's Middle Ages, people believed it wasn't a mental, but rather a physical disease. People also believed that out of everyone, the Swiss got the disease the most. The Swiss, you see, were known to be an ethnic group that worked away from home in that era. They lived far away from their homes. There were no telephones at the time, so they couldn't even hear their families' voices for ages and ages. It's easy to imagine the young Swiss workers got homesick while working in a strange land. These Swiss who got homesick wanted to go home, but they couldn't because of their jobs. The conflict made them weak physically and mentally. Some of them went crazy and tried to escape from their reality by committing suicide or running away. The Swiss at the time were very superstitious, and many folk remedies and occult-like treatments to prevent homesickness went around. Since going home was the only treatment, they must have called it a fatal disease. But it isn't really one, of course. Specifically, homesickness is a sign of that human homing instinct. Your brain desires to go back to your safe area, namely your home. At first, your brain makes you remember the happy memories of your home, and it urges you to go home in a natural way. But when reason stops you from achieving your desire, your brain starts sending unnatural signals to your body. As a result, your body gets weak, and that makes it more difficult for you to live in a strange land. In the end, you have to bend reason in order to achieve your desire to go home. So homesickness is born from our homing instincts. And the stronger one's homing instinct is, the stronger their homesickness. The strength of that homing instinct varies from individual to individual and depends on the environment in which those individuals live. When your home is safe and the environment you live in is dangerous, your homing instincts grow stronger. On the other hand, when the environment you live in is safer than your homing instinct becomes very weak. Safety isn't the only element that affects its strength. Cultural aspects affect it too. The many customs demanding families to return home for major events varies with each region, so your birthplace's culture also alters the strength of your homing instinct. Amongst those regions, the transcendents of Onagafuchi village were believed to have an excessively strong homing instinct. The people of Onagafuchi forbade their fellows from ever leaving. Many believe this was the effect of the elitism and sense of purity I already mentioned before. People today still strongly believe Oyashiro-sama puts his curse on you if you break his rule and abandon the village. This superstition can be interpreted as homesickness. If homesickness is directly proportional to one's homing instinct, then the exaggerated expression curse would signify the strength of that homesickness, and also their homing instinct. I can assume that they hated the outside world and created an insular society precisely because of their powerful homing ability. Unfortunately, there's no way to measure the strength of the homing ability that the primitive people of Onagafuchi had. It was so strongly forbidden to leave the village that nobody left long enough to get homesick. However, after the Meiji era, things changed. The sacredness of Onagafuchi dwindled with the efforts of modernization. Many young people started longing for city life, and some people were forced to leave the village to get a job. As a result, villagers started venturing outside the village borders. That was when the transcendents of Onagafuchi realized how strong their homing ability was for the first time. The residents of Hinamizawa got extremely homesick. After a while, people started to call this homesickness the curse of Oyashiro-sama. It became rumored that a person who left the village to get a job in a strange land was cursed, that he went crazy and died, and people who had left the village started coming back to either it or the nearby town. Their homesickness and their homing ability were very strong because of their culture. It's reasonable to think these were cultivated by the unique religion in Hinamizawa, namely the cult of Oyashiro-sama. From the moment they were born, they were taught the rules of Oyashiro-sama. They must have felt guilty about leaving the village unconsciously. As a result, they considered their homesickness to be the curse of Oyashiro-sama. I'm not sure if their homesickness got stronger because of the rules of Oyashiro-sama, or if they made the rules of Oyashiro-sama because their homesickness got stronger. I don't know which came first. Oh, my goodness, that was a lot of reading. I got tired of reading such small print and lay down on the floor on my back. The true identity of the curse of Oyashiro-sama is homesickness. Mio-san believed my story, and she let me read these scrapbooks. That's why I expected to find something interesting. But what it's saying is the answer to all of it is homesickness, which many doctors told me so many times at counseling. I'm a little upset. The word homesickness can't explain the extraordinary experience I had. I saw Oyashiro-sama come down to me from a bright light in the bathroom. I saw the dusky red nasty maggots come out of my blood vessels. The scrapbook doesn't explain any of that. I don't understand how Mio-san was going to explain the cloud of maggots. Maybe she didn't have any explanation of that to begin with. Was it just a delusion? I flipped through one of the other scrapbooks Mio-san let me borrow, looking for an explanation of the maggots I saw. Then, I found it. It had the exact title I was looking for. About maggots, okay, and the curse of Oyashiro-sama. In the Meiji era, a group of villagers were on their way back to Hinamizawa, and they started discussing a rumor about a weird disease. They said that maggots started crawling out of the wounds of a person who left Hinamizawa, and that the maggots ate the person's body from the inside. The Shinto priest of the Furude Shrine at the time explained that the weird disease was a sign of the curse of Oyashiro-sama. According to tradition, the Shinto priest showed the villagers an ancient scroll, and he told them the story of the maggots had been passed down through the ages. This is what the scroll said. The world where the demons came from must be interpreted as the land of death, and the demons in the land of death had to live their lives while being eaten by maggots. The villagers who were of the demon's blood had nothing to worry about as long as they lived in Hinamizawa under the protection of Oyashiro-sama. But once they left Hinamizawa, abandoning that protection, the maggots that had been sleeping in the blood of the demons would start to awaken, and they would eat their bodies from the inside out. This maggot disease scared the villagers for a while, and they asked the shrine to provide them with protective talismans whenever they had to leave the village on business. This is interesting, as it's similar to the way homesickness was dealt with by the Swiss in the Middle Ages. After the war started, the delusions of the maggot disease faded away, but there remained a custom to send talismans to families that lived away from Hinamizawa. So Rena must have heard this story at some point when she was a kid, and maybe subconsciously she remembered that because she didn't mention anything about like how she had heard this story before, so I'm guessing that's what it is. Like, maybe she heard the story when she was very young. She doesn't remember knowing about it, but, like, somewhere in the back of the recesses of her mind, she must have, like, remembered that, and that's how her delusions kind of, interpreted themselves, is as the maggots coming out of her blood. Assuming that that was a delusion, which I'm still of the belief. I don't think that there's actual maggots in her blood. The talismans had the word maggot on them. But the most interesting part about all this is the residents of Hinamizawa didn't know about the maggot disease until the rumors began. I thought that their unconscious worship made those people think of homesickness as a curse. So this case of the previously unknown maggot disease directly contradicted the research I had done so far. It's natural to think the group of people who were on their way back to the village were lost in a mass delusion because they strongly believed in the curse, and that the Shinto priest took advantage of that state of panic to instill a deeper faith in them. But I'm not fully convinced it was merely a coincidence that this mass delusion matched with the story in the old picture scroll. Okay, so now they're saying maybe it's real? I wonder if it's possible to see maggots in a wound without having the prerequisite knowledge when a person is cursed by Oyashiro-sama. I wish Oyashiro-sama would put his curse on someone I could study. I'd love to see those maggots coming out of someone. Oh, Takano. I felt as if Mio-san was here and making that request of me. I remember, when she gave me the scrapbooks, she said I might be the only one who could understand them. I felt good just for a moment, because I found out the maggots weren't a delusion. But at the same time, it destroyed my excuse that it was a delusion. The maggots weren't a delusion. They were there. All of a sudden my wrists, elbows, inner thighs, and neck started itching. Oh no. I felt the urge to cut open a blood vessel, but I quietly held it down. Why do I have a feeling she's only going to be able to hold it down for so long? I don't think I can deal with her just, slicing herself open. I remembered that Mio-san looked very serious when I talked about the maggots. She must have thought it was creepy. But so did I. While I was crying because nobody believed me, a part of me didn't want to believe my body was filled with those creepy things. I think part of me wanted to believe it was a delusion. But now I know it wasn't. It wasn't a delusion. There are some people who had the same experience. Maggots in the demon's blood will awaken when you lose the protection of Oyashiro-sama. In other words, they may not awaken under the protection of Oyashiro-sama, but all the villagers still have the maggots in them without knowing it. People of the demon's blood are people who have the creepy maggots in their bodies. I tried not to jump to conclusions and flip the pages again. I unconsciously looked for something related to maggots. About parasites and control of the host. This feels so weird because I've been in a weird kind of YouTube black hole or rabbit hole, I should say, where I've been looking up bugs and parasites and things like that. Even though they creep me out, I still find them very fascinating. I'm very weird. The maggot disease made me think of something. Is it possible to say that the extremely strong homesickness of Hinamizawa was an infectious disease caused by some kind of parasite? I'm not trying to connect the maggots they saw with parasites. I'm trying to think about the possibility that their culture, their religion, might be associated with an infectious disease. Many infectious diseases are caused unintentionally by parasites. A parasite's host is literally its home. It wants to live within the host body for as long as it can. The best way to do that is to coexist with the host without the host knowing it. But some parasites try to control their hosts and use them for prosperity. For example, some parasites have the ability to control their host, in order to force them to be eaten by a superior host. A typical example... Oh my gosh, I think I watched a video about this guy. Let's see if I can remember how to pronounce the name. Is the Dicrosolium I cannot remember. Dendriticarum. It uses snails or ants as intermediate hosts, and it forces them to move to the upper side of vegetation so that it's easier for a superior host to consume it. One parasite that controls more complicated animals is called Toxoplasma. Yeah, I've heard about this one because I got a cat, so I've heard about, having, being careful with this kind of stuff. Toxoplasma gondii. It uses mice as intermediate hosts, with a superior host being cats. This parasite makes a mouse lose its fear of cats in order to increase its chance of getting eaten, so that the parasite can live within a cat instead. There are parasites that choose hosts at random. The rabies virus is commonly known for that. It lives and breeds in the brain of a host, and it moves into the host's saliva through the salivary glands. It makes the host extremely aggressive in order to make it bite things randomly, so that it in turn can move into other hosts through the saliva. That's what rabies does. Many parasites have a similar ability to control hosts to their benefit. The examples I used above are about parasites that move into other hosts to prosper. But I think there must be some kind of parasite that controls its host in order to have a comfortable environment in which to live. I want to try to connect this theory to the abnormal homing ability and homesickness of the Onagafuchi residents. Let's say there's some kind of parasite that exists in Hinamizawa, and it lives within all the villagers' bodies. For the parasite, Hinamizawa is the most comfortable environment to live in, so it gives the host a strong homing ability in order to make them stay in Hinamizawa. Furthermore, it causes the host to get homesick whenever they ignore this homing ability and try to leave. Parasites need hosts in which to live. It's convenient for them if their hosts build a community in the environment where it feels comfortable. This theory makes it easier for me to explain the mysteries I described earlier. The Transcendents of Onagafuchi knew about the existence of this parasite. They knew that, as hosts to the parasites, they couldn't live outside the village. That's why they created a culture and rules that prohibited contact with the outside world. It also explains why people act so abnormal during the dam conflict. So the demons that came out of the swamp in the legend of Oyashiro-sama can be interpreted as the mass spread of the parasite. The story about the demons attacking the villagers must be a metaphor for the behavior of the infected villagers who are controlled by the parasite. This theory is too crazy. I should have just laughed about it. But I felt bad for Mio-san, so I decided not to. Hinamizawa is controlled by a parasite? You could use that theory to explain how the maggots came out of me. I felt a little bit dizzy. I was so confused, and a part of me thought it was ridiculous, and another part of me thought it was more convincing than any curse. So now I've got to throw that as a possibility as a parasite on top of all of the other theories out there. But Mio-san was probably erased because she wrote these scrapbooks. If so, the contents of these scrapbooks must be something that they can't ignore. They try to get all of her scrapbooks and consign them to oblivion. What if they notice some of her scrapbooks are missing? I felt a chill running through my spine. I have to keep it a secret that I have these scrapbooks, and I'll have to try to understand more about their contents. I remember Mio-san told me that the 3 families are behind the series of the mysterious deaths, and that they're trying to resurrect the cult of Oyashiro-sama. According to the theory I just read, the parasite must be trying to maintain the current environment of Hinamizawa. The healthiest environment for it is a completely closed village, just like the primitive Onagafuchi. It must be very comfortable for the parasite if no hosts go outside the village. They don't even like that the villagers often leave the village to go shopping. That means the parasite would try to goad the host into resurrecting the cult of Oyashiro-sama. I remember there was an article in the scrapbook saying the demon's blood runs thickest in the 3 families. That would mean that they have a larger amount of parasites in them than the other villagers, and that they're under its control. Oh shit. I'm wondering if Rena, if she slowly kind of descends into madness, if she's going to, do something to Mio, maybe like hold her down and cut open her skin to see if more maggots come out of her, to see if that's true. The three families seem to be planning to bring the village back to the Onagafuchi era. Reviving the Watanagashi festival after the dam conflict can be interpreted as their desire to revive the faith that had started to fade away in the Meiji era. The three families, especially the Sonozaki family, have a great influence over the region and the public organizations. What's going on here? I thought this to be a poorly written theory, but the pieces fit together one after another. Well, Shion thought the same thing, and then that kind of ended up crumbling. Once again, if we believe Mion's telling the truth about, the Sonozakis not knowing who's behind the murders. I've never played a jigsaw puzzle as crazy as this. I felt my brain swirling due to the absurd theory. A part of me thought this was ridiculous, and another part of me thought I might be about to expose an unbelievable truth. When I tried to look into the center of it, I felt as if I was going to fall into the whirlpool and drown. I'll have to devote myself to reading more seriously. There must be some truth to this. It caused misfortune and made my life miserable after I moved to Ibaraki. I might be able to find the truth, including the cause of my parents' divorce and my desperate behavior. Right then, I heard a knock on the door all of a sudden, scaring me. I hid the scrapbooks under a cushion.
Rena, 電話が来てるぞ。
電話？こんな時間に？誰だろう？
本屋さんからだぞ。本の取り寄せとか頼んだのか？沖宮書房の大石さんって人からだ。
Oh, and that's what Oishi said to Keiichi, right? When he called Keiichi at home. Okay. Now, what is this about? Is this about Rena? Like, through all of this, I forgot. Like, you forget that, oh yeah, Rena killed two people. Like, we're going into Oyashiro-sama's thing right now. I'm just like, oh yeah, but there's also that. Someone might find those bodies. I opened the windows, but all they let in was heat and the cries of the cicadas.
暑いな。
味ね。
It was break time between classes, but we couldn't really get any rest. Mion and I leaned on our desks, exhausted by the heat. The younger kids sure are tough, considering how the heat wasn't bothering them at all. They were running around the classroom despite the temperature.
やっぱりさ、都会の学校だと教室にもクーラーとか入ってるわけ？
そんなことねえぞ。あるのはせいぜい職員室ぐらいだな。
うわぁ、それは羨ましいね。生徒みんなで職員室を襲って占拠とかしないの？
その辺の発想が実にミオン臭い。ああ。
I didn't even have the energy to laugh. Mion and I stopped talking and used our notebooks to fan ourselves. I looked at the empty seat nearby. Oh, it was Rena's. Or Rena's. I'm saying Rena now. It was Rena's. Rena didn't come to school today. She called and told Chie-sensei she couldn't come because she's sick.
レナのやつ、最近元気ないよな。
だね。暑さにやられたのかもね。
なあ、本気で暑さでやられたと思ってるのか？
そう思ってるけど。
例の一件がさ。
かもね。それに暑さも加わって、夏バテでも起こしたんじゃないかな。
I can't even imagine how distressing it was for her to commit a murder, dismember the bodies, and get caught by her friends. We took each other's hands at that place, and we united. All of us believed we had closed the case there and had regained our peace. But was that as easy for Rena as it was for us? No, because Rena actually was the one who did the murder. She told you this. She must have not quite recovered yet. If she had recovered so quickly from murdering two people, I would be concerned.
おじさんはみんなで楽しく遊んでれば、そのうち元気になると思ってたんだけどね。そこまで心の傷が浅くなかったってことかな。
こういう時さ、どうしたらレナを元気づけられるかな？
多分、ほっとくのが一番じゃないかな。
おいおい、そんなのでいいのかよ。 俺たち仲間だろ。
ほら、ホームシックってあるじゃない？
Oh, and there's the thing about homesickness. Maybe Mion knows about this whole thing about the homesickness parasite theory, or maybe she just mentioned it and it's just completely has nothing to do with anything.
あれもね、ちょっと寂しいからって言って、実家に電話なんかかけちゃうと、一気に発症しちゃうらしいよ。寂しい時はぐっと耐えて、例えばスポーツにでも打ち込んで気分転換を図るのが一番なんだってさ。
気分転換させてやりたくても、あいつ最近部活に加わらないし。
レナはどうか知らないけどさ、人には甘えたい欲ってのがあるんだよ。そばに支えてくれる人や同情してくれる人がいると甘えたくなる欲。慰めてくれる人が現れるとさ、際限なく甘えちゃうことってない？
どうだろうな。
際限なく甘えるってことは、相手の同情をより深く得ようとするってこと。そうすると、ケイちゃんは慰めてるつもりなのに、相手はどんどん落ち込んでいっちゃうことがあるんだよね。
Now, Mion seems to know this pretty well.
慰められて甘えられる。これに味を占めると、不幸に酔うのが癖になる。レナもその辺わかってるから、わざと一人になろうとしてるんじゃない？慰めや甘えが目的だったら、私たちのそばにいて涙を流せば済むわけだし。
じゃあ落ち込んでるレナをどう励ませばいいんだよ。
女の心情としては、辛さを励ましてくれるより、忘れさせてくれる方が嬉しいね。
慰めるな、励ますな。なんだよ、お手上げじゃないかよ。
慰めるな励ますなは心理カウンセラーの鉄則だって知ってる？結局、心の傷ってのは自分で治すようにできてる。周りの人が治したとしても、それは本当の完治じゃない。
Man, she really knows a lot about this stuff.
だから、レナが自分で元気になるのを私たちは見守るしかないんだよ。
理屈じゃ理解できるが、なんだか薄情な気がして好きになれねえな。
I clasped my hands behind the back of my head, looking at the ceiling. Mion laughed.
それだけレナのことを心配してくれるケイちゃんが身近にいるなら、立ち直れるよ。
近くにいるだけでか？うさんくさいな。
ケイイチにだってできることがありますですよ。
Rika-chan spoke up. I wonder how long she'd been listening to our conversation.
俺にもできることがあるのか？
レナが話したいと思った時や、打ち明けたいと思った時に、静かに聞いてあげることなのです。
聞くだけでいいのか？励まさなくていいのかよ。
ケイちゃん、打ち明けるだけで心が軽くなるもんだよ。静かに耳を傾けるのが何よりも嬉しい時ってある。
I know this is a stereotypical thing, but I've noticed it's a thing where it seems like women, when they're upset, they just want to vent and just have somebody listen and sympathize and empathize with them, whereas guys, they want to fix the problem. And it seems to be a thing where Keiichi's like, I want to fix the problem, and the girls are telling him, just let, like, if she needs to talk, just let her talk, don't try and fix the problem for her. It's just like, Keiichi's just like, he just wants to just fix things, and it's just like, no, sometimes you can't do that.
ミーの言う通りなのですよ。レナが話したいと思った時、いつでも話しかけられる場所にいてあげるのも、きっと仲間として大切なことなのだと思いますです。
Mion and Rika-chan were absolutely right. I was going to pat Rena on her shoulder and tell her to cheer up when I saw her next, but now I know that would be one-sided on my part. Rena doesn't want to feel down herself. She wants to cheer up if at all possible. If I cheered her up irresponsibly, she'd be very disappointed because she'd think that I didn't understand her pain. But once again, I like Keiichi because he tries, you know? He tries his best.
俺、ちょっと人の心ってやつを理解しようとしてなかったな。レナを励ましたいのは俺の欲求であって、 レナの求めることじゃない。ありがとな、二人とも。俺、ひょっとすると、今日まで何か勘違いをしてたかもしれないぜ。
On that day, I thought I cheered her up, but I started to doubt if I had reached her heart. I might have just been dragging her someplace where I wanted her to go. I wasn't on her side in the real sense of the term. All of a sudden, Rika-chan patted my head.
圭一は一番のレナの味方ですよ。それは疑わなくて大丈夫なのです。
俺、また考え事を口に出しちまってたのか？
レナの心には届いてるよ。ケイちゃんはあの日、とても強い力をレナに与えたんだからさ。いやー、でもさ、よくよく思い出すと、すっごい恥ずかしいこと言ってたよね。
We heard footsteps from the hallway, and everybody started to head back to their desks.
お待たせしました。それでは委員長、ご起立。
We didn't have a club meeting that day because Rena wasn't around. That worked out for me, because I had an errand to run. It wasn't a big errand. My mom wanted me to use her point card to go get some detergent. I didn't see the point of going all the way to the store just to get detergent. Well, my mom told me to go because she's busy helping my dad with his work. I started walking towards the shopping center. I noticed someone was watching me, hiding behind a distant tree. Didn't this happen? Was this the first chapter where he felt like someone was following him, or is that a different chapter? Someone was following him behind, like, in the trees. I wonder who would do such a mischievous thing. I stared at them to find out who it was. At which point they emerged.
お？レナじゃねえか。
Oh, was that the first chapter where she did the same thing? Are you feeling better now? I was about to say that, but I swallowed the words. Oh, somehow Rena looked very serious. This feels sort of familiar.
どうしたんだ？
This feels very familiar. Rena put her index finger to her lips, told me to be quiet, looked around carefully, and beckoned for me to come over. I had no idea what was going on, but I followed her instructions, shut my mouth, and ran to her. Rena gestured for me to squat down to hide in the shadow of a bush. I didn't know why I had to do that, but I could ask her the question later. I just followed her orders for now. Rena looked like she was making sure no one was following her. If it was Mion, she'd do something like this just to fool me as a joke. But I know Rena doesn't do things like this for fun. I had no idea what kind of situation I had gotten myself into, but I could feel how tense it was, and I made myself as small as I could.
もういいよ。ごめんね。
The tone of her voice made me relax a little.
どうしたってんだよ、一体。
多分私、誰かに最近後をつけられているの。
なんだって。
Who would follow her? When I thought about it, I realized how stupid the question was.
まさか、警察かよ。
Rena, Mamiya, and Teppei Hojo. 2 people disappeared. Even though they were awful human beings, the police had to investigate if they found out they'd gone missing. It probably wouldn't be difficult to find out that Rena had often been to Rena's house. But it should be okay. As long as they don't find those bags, it should be okay. Well, we know that that thing is happening in the summer where they're going to be planting trees in that area, so it's only a matter of time.
警察なのか、警察じゃないのかわからないけれど、綿流しの夜以降、誰かにずっと見られている気がするの。
どういうことだよ。
Once I asked that question, Rena stared directly at me with a blank expression. Her eyes looked as though they were evaluating me. She stared at me as if she was assessing whether I was worth talking to about something very important. Rena squeezed her own wrist tightly, and started talking in a whisper.
話してもいいけど、誰にも内緒にできる。
ああ、もちろんだぜ。レナがそうしってんなら、誰にも喋らない。
圭一くんなら信用できるよ。
She smiled and looked around one more time.
連中はひょっとすると、ミオさんのスクラップ帳を探しているのかもしれないの。
ミオさん？で、ああ、看護師の高野さんのことか。あと、スクラップ帳って何のことだ？
秘密の捜査になっているって言ってたから、 多分圭一くんは知らないよね。高野美代さん殺されたんだって。
いつ？
She told me to be quiet again. I lowered my voice and let her continue.
綿流しの夜、私たちは美代さんと、あと富武さんに会ったよね。あの直後に二人が襲われたんだって。富武さんはお社様のたたりにあって喉をかきむしって死んだ。美代さんは隣の県の山中で焼き殺されていたと言ってたの。
So I'm assuming that Oishi probably pulled everybody aside and asked them, like, at least about Tomotaki. I'm assuming Keiichi probably knows Tomotaki is dead, but I guess Mio-san was probably, nobody knows about that. But he told Rena, so if he told Rena about it, why wouldn't he have told everybody else, unless Rena was the only one that Oishi talked to?
それ本当かよ。そんなの誰も知らないぞ。
Okay, so...
それは警察が伏せて捜査をしてるからなの。
Or they may have told them that Takano died or disappeared or something, but Keiichi doesn't know the details about it.
hinamizawa村連続開始事件は今年で5年目になっちゃうでしょ。だから変に騒がれたくないんで事件を公にしていないんだって。
なるほど。秘密捜査なのは分かったが、レナはそんな話どこで聞いたんだよ。
内緒だよ。私実は大石っていう沖宮署の刑事さんと連絡を取り合っているの。
So Keiichi had no idea, so Oishi didn't... That's weird that Oishi wouldn't talk to Keiichi or Mion or any of the... Because it wasn't just Rena who saw them that night, it was all of them.
その人に教えてもらった。
どうして大石って人がレナに？
さあ、ちょっとそこはわからない。彼が言うには私なら信用できそうだからって言うんだけどね。
I was dumbfounded to hear all this, but I knew she wasn't lying. If it was Mion, she'd be sticking her tongue out by now, but Rena wouldn't make a joke of something like this.
美代さんが殺された理由は多分彼女の研究のせいだと思うの。美代さんがこの村の歴史とか民族学とかそういうのを熱心に調べてたってのは知っている？
なんとなくは聞いたことある。
Takano-san was interested in the occult and in mysterious things. I remember Mion once told me that she was studying the village's legends of man-eating demons out of curiosity.
彼女は多分その研究の中でこの村に関するある重要な秘密を知ってしまったの。あるいは彼女はそんなにも確信には踏み入ってなかったのかもしれないけど、そうは思われなかったんだろうね。
ちょっと待て。この村の秘密ってなんだよ。
私は美代さんのスクラップ帳をほんの数冊借りて読んだだけ。でも彼女が特に大事にしていた秘蔵の数冊だからかなり重要なことが記してあったと思う。だから多分美代さんが至ろうとしていたことに8割方ぐらいは近づいていると思うの。でもあまりに突拍子もなくて私にはまだ信じられない。
This is Higurashi. Nothing is really too crazy to believe.
美代さんの想像が正しいかどうか検証してる段階なの。
Oh, so when she's saying that she wants to prove whether Mio-san's theory is right, it's like I said, maybe she's going to get one of the three families and kidnap them or something and, cut them open and see if maggots come out.
で、何なんだ一体。秘密を知ると殺されるっていう、この村の秘密ってのは。
I gasped the moment those words left my mouth. If Rena told me, I might get killed too. Oh, Keiichi, that's just how it goes with you. Every time.
圭一君にはまだ全部話したくない。確証が持てたら話すね。だってそれくらいに途方もないとんでもない話だから。
Keiichi's like, you know what? Oh, forget I said anything.
確証ってなんだよ。
例えば予備知識のないことは私自らがその存在を検証できているけど、他にもたくさん未検証のことがあるの。それらを埋めていかないと私ですら にわかには信じられない。
Maggots? I was totally lost now, and I wanted to ask her some questions, but I decided not to cut in. It was so hot outside. But Rena held her arms as if she was cold.
レナ、俺はいつだってお前の味方なんだからな。俺だけは信用してくれて構わない。
ありがとう。その一言がすごい嬉しい。
From her expression alone, I could tell she really meant it. I could also tell she was involved in something very big, and that she felt lonely because she couldn't tell anybody else about it. I had to be on her side while she was going through a difficult time.
私とね、今日ここで出会ったことは内緒にした方がいいと思うの。
I wonder if he can't help himself. Keiichi's gonna Keiichi, and he's gonna step in and try and fix things, rather than just, I'll be here if you need to talk, but it's like, I feel like he's just gonna be like, I have to help her in some more tangible way.
私と接触があったことが知られたら、ケイチ君にも危害が及ぶかもしれないから。
わかった。俺に何か協力できることはないのかよ。
今はない。でも、協力をお願いできることが分かっただけで、今の私には心強いよ。最後には頼らせて。
おう、任せとけ。
し、
Oh.
車が来る。
Rena pushed my head into the bush. I went along with it and crouched down even lower into the bushes. We stayed quiet for a while. I could hear a car coming closer, and after a while a white van passed by. Ooh, the white van! I was surprised at her hearing. She heard the car coming when it was still far off in the distance.
今の車、ナンバー見えた？
いや、ごめん。見えなかった。
私もちょっと見えなかったけど、
Oh.
多分さっきと同じナンバーの車だと思うの。
Now she's saying a white van is following her.
レナを尾行しているとかいう連中か？
多分。普段車なんか通らない道で、今日は何度も追い上げられるの。その度に、私は隠れてやり過ごしているからいいんだけど、どうもおかしい。
そいつらなのか？高野さんたちを殺して、レナが持ってるスクラップ帳を狙っているという連中は。
多分。
I don't blame her for not being able to believe what's going on, because this is really crazy. Takano-san uncovered something really significant through her studies. The people who want that information hidden found out about it, and they killed her on the night of Watagashi, copying the curse of Oyashiro-sama. They're looking for the scrapbooks, the fruits of her research, and Rena has them. That's why they're trying to kill Rena?
じゃあ、レナの家が危ないってことはないのか？
大丈夫。スクラップ帳は、ゴミ山の私の隠れ家に隠してある。お父さんが不安だけど、何も知らないからこそ、何も危害が及ばないかもしれない。
Oh no. And here I've been saying, like, I have a bad feeling about something happening to her dad, and she's saying that she's like, he should be fine, which I feel is like a big red flag that he's not going to be fine. Keiichi seems to think the same thing.
ケイチ君が言わなくても、顔に書いてあるよ。突拍子もない話で、とても信じられない。でしょ？
I wanted to deny it, but I felt bad to lie. Yeah, don't lie to Rena. I remained silent in the affirmative.
それが当然の反応。私だって、ミオさんのスクラップ帳を読み始めた最初は、なんだこりゃって思って、全然信じられなかったもの。すべてに目を通して、ようやく何かの筋が見えてきたんだもん。
すまん。もちろん、レナの味方になりたいのは本心だ。でも、話が全然見えないんで、どう助けてやればいいかわかんないんだ。
話せば、ケイチ君の身にも危険が降りかかるよ。
レナにはすでに降りかかってるんだろ？ならおあいこだぜ。気にするな。
Famous last words.
わかった。
Okay.
話す。多分、ミオさんたちを殺したのは、Hinamizawa御三家。もっとはっきり言ってしまえば、みーちゃんの家である。
Oh, so
その先本家。
she's gonna go after Mion.
どうして？
ケイチ君も、過去の連続開始事件は知ってるよね。
ああ。ダム戦争の時の村の旧敵ばかりが 毎年犠牲になっていくっていうあれだろ。
この連続開始事件はダム戦争の生産のようなものなの。村の裏切り者を片付けることによって本当の意味でダム戦争を終わらせようとする。
確かにそう見えないことはないよな。誰もがはっきりと口にはしないが、うすうすと園崎家の仕業だと疑ってるみたいな話は聞いたことあるぜ。
でも裏切り者を制裁するなら別に綿流しの場にこだわらなくてもいいんじゃない？毎年たたりで一人、鬼隠しで一人なんてスローペースで殺す必要はない。そうでしょ？
I never heard the words demoning away before, but Rena clearly thought they had some kind of creepy significant meaning, so I decided not to cut in.
つまりこれらの連続開始事件は綿流しの祭りに神聖性を取り戻そうとする意志があるの。もっと踏み込んで言うと、明治以降に失われた鬼ヶ淵村の神聖性を取り戻すための段階的イベント。彼らは最終的には太古の昔にそうだったような原理的なお社様信仰を復活させることを目的としている。
お社様信仰、古出神社のことか？
そう。古出神社って崇められていると思う？お年寄りの人は敬っているけど、それだけだよね。子供たちは境内を遊び場くらいにしか思ってないし、ほとんどの村人たちも地域の集会所くらいにしか思っていない。その神聖性は失われている。それがダム戦争をきっかけに蘇ったの。彼らはそれをお社様信仰を復活させるいい機会だと捉えた。
ってことはつまりお社様信仰の信者たちが裏で暗躍しているってことか？
そういうこと。そもそもお社様信仰は御三家によって管理されていた。だから御三家には現代にも脈々とお社様信仰を復活させなければならないという至上目的が受け継がれているの。それを思えば御三家がダム戦争中に村を一丸にまとめたり、廃れかけていたお社様を引き合いに出し、古出神社にわざわざ同盟事務所を設けた理由も透けて見えてくる。
じゃあhinamizawa村連続開始事件ってのは、いやお社様を信仰する盲信的な集団の仕業なら待てよ、どうして高野さんが殺されなきゃならないんだ？
それは御三家が鬼ヶ淵村と呼ばれた太古からずっと隠してきたこの村のある重大な秘密に関係があるの。それを暴かれるとお社様という神の神聖性が失われる。だから彼らはミオさんの研究が確信に近づいたことを知り消したの。
その重大な秘密ってのは何なんだ？それを知ると俺も狙われるってんだろうけど上等だぜ。
だからそれはまだ言いたくない。私自身が10割の確証を得るまで言いたくない。
See, I'm seeing the parallels here between Rena and Shion, where both of them were going based on a hypothesis about something. The difference being that Rena seems to really at least be trying to verify it first, whereas Shion kind of let her emotions rule over and she assumed things. And I mean, once again, I don't know if Mion was telling the truth about the three families not being involved, but I think Rena's being smarter about this.
多分今ここで話しても圭一君は耐えきれなくなって笑い出してしまうに違いないもの。
おいおい、俺がそんな奴に見えるかよ。
もう少し時間が欲しいの。あまりの事実に私ですら受け入れきれていないの。だからもう少し時間を欲しいの。お願い。
わかった。
今日ここで話したことは誰にも喋っちゃダメだよ。みーちゃんとリカちゃん、もちろんさとこちゃんにもダメ。
わかったよ。
じゃあ圭一君はもう行って。私はもう少し辺りを伺ってから行く。用心に過ぎるということはないからね。
Rena ducked low in the bushes and moved away. I was left alone there. The cries of the cicadas surrounded around me, making it seem as if I was alone there the whole time. I started walking, still dumbfounded. In the end, Rena didn't tell me the secret because she was afraid of putting me in danger. But she told me clearly that there are people who want to resurrect the cult of Oyashiro-sama, and that they're among the 3 families that control the entire village. They orchestrated the series of mysterious deaths for that purpose, and they killed Takano-san because she got too close to the secret they wanted to hide. Rena met Takano-san and happened to obtain the scrapbooks in which Takano-san wrote about her research. Rena still can't believe the secret written in the scrapbooks because it's just too crazy. Hey, come on, Rena. You're kidding me, right? It's like one of those comic book stories. A mysterious occult group is plotting a conspiracy? I mean, it's not funny even if it is a joke. But Rena is right about one thing. Even if this is true, it's really hard to believe. I understand why Rena wanted to wait to tell me the secret. Maybe she was just fooled by Takano-san. But Takano-san was murdered for real. So is it also true someone is following Rena looking for the scrapbooks? I remember, Rena said that a white van was following her. You can see white vans anywhere. I bet there are a lot in this village alone. She might just be oversensitive to everything right now. Rena hasn't recovered from the shock since that day. That's probably why she got the idea in her head that the police or someone else is coming after her. I didn't cut in while she was talking. I think I did the right thing. Yeah, Keiichi, you kept your mouth shut for once. If I had said it was ridiculous or something to her face, Rena wouldn't have trusted me ever again. At that point, however, I gasped. Oh, a white van was parked on the side of the street. I wasn't sure if this was the same car that passed by earlier since I didn't see the plate number, but the number of people in the car and the ambience of it was similar to the one earlier. There's one other thing that looks suspicious about it. There was no reason to park here. It was on a small road in the middle of the woods. There's nothing around here. No traffic lights, no vending machines, and no public phones. I probably wouldn't have noticed it under ordinary circumstances, but I felt something was wrong. And once I noticed how odd it was definitely suspicious. There were 4 men in work uniforms in the white van. The driver was smoking a cigarette, but the other men were just sitting there doing nothing. They wanted to take a break or have a smoke. They could have chosen a better place than here. It was possible they stopped because they had to go to the bathroom really badly, but it didn't seem that way either. They didn't look as comfortable or relaxed like they would if they were taking a break. They looked like they were waiting for something to happen. There was a deep tension in that car. Could they possibly be waiting for Rena? Oh, no way. I didn't see anybody walking around here. This road is a back road. Nobody really uses this road, let alone by car. But it's impossible. I felt bad for Rena to even think about this, but this must be something that she got into her head because she's feeling victimized or something. She must be imagining things because she's still nervous from when her friends caught her in the act of killing Rena and Teppei.
Nii-chan.
I heard someone say that when I passed by the van. He couldn't mean me. He didn't even know who I was. So I assumed he was talking to one of the other people in the car. I pretended like I didn't hear him and I kept walking by, and then he said it again. And honked the horn as well.
兄ちゃん、すまんね。学校の帰り会ね。
He had a strong accent similar to that of the older villagers. He must live here, but I didn't know him. I could tell he didn't know me either because he didn't call me by my name.
はい、そうですけど。
兄ちゃん、学校からこの道をずっと歩いてきたんで、ちょうど文房具屋の角を曲がって。
そうですけど、何か？
They were probably lost, I thought. This village has many small turns, and you can easily get lost when you try to take a shortcut. So they must have been waiting for someone to ask for directions. But then he said something disturbing. Ooh.
兄ちゃんさ、この道の途中で女の子に会わんかったかいね。
え、
白い帽子に白い服を着た女の子なんよ。
Oh, snap.
紫のリボンもついとん。会わんかったかいね。
They were definitely talking about Rena.
いえ、会ってないです。
Oh, Keiichi, you're a terrible liar. I wasn't ready to hear them ask that. Rather, I was scared. That's why my voice got all shaky. Up until that point, I couldn't believe Rena's story. It's funny, now it's the opposite, where it's like you think that, initially you think Keiichi is being all weird and paranoid, and now in this one it's Rena, but then you're like, oh, they kind of have a reason to be. I thought it was ridiculous. I actually laughed, if only to myself. That's why I wasn't ready at all. My heart was beating fast and I was sweating all over. I immediately answered no, I didn't, but it might have sounded like an obvious lie. The driver stared into my eyes. He looked like he was trying to figure out if I was lying or not, and my legs started to shake. I felt like a frog under the glare of a snake, and I couldn't move a muscle for a while. But I think the same went for those men, too. They were clearly a suspicious group, and they had just asked a villager about a girl out of the blue. Anybody would get suspicious. And I was right. The man broke the ice and started making excuses before I even asked him why he wanted to know about the girl.
ああ、そんな深い意味はないんで。
Oh my god, that sounds like a Keiichi excuse.
さっき女の子を追い抜いたのによ。来たのが男の子だったから。
That is,
あれと思っただけなんで。
that is a terrible explanation.
そうですか。
忘れてえな。ごめんな兄ちゃん。うちらもう行くんて。
The man started the engine and drove away. This is when you wish that you had, like, back in the day, cell phones would be great, because then he could call her and be like, hey, you know, this just happened. Be on guard. After they left, I saw nothing. That's right, nothing. There was no reason why they had to park here. So, were they really waiting for Rena? Damn, that is interesting, because there's like all these things about the white van popping up in different chapters, and there's never really been an explanation for it. That was very suspicious that they're specifically looking for Rena. Alright, lunch takeout list 2, so we're gonna get into some more deep Rena psychology stuff here. Furthermore, it's important we closely monitor her father. Since he has also suffered mental shock from the divorce and has been trying hard to take care of the patient, there's a strong possibility that he may develop an induced delusional disorder. As the first step of mental care, one should listen to the patient's story carefully without denying it. That's the most basic of basics. However, when the patient and the listener are related, it's easy for the listener to become deeply influenced by the patient's delusions. Additionally, delusional parasitosis is widely known to make people highly impressionable, and the influence sometimes can spread throughout a whole community. Therefore, even if several people claim to acquire a parasitic infection, it doesn't necessarily prove the existence of a parasite. Some of the phone calls to the healthcare centers for the extermination of pests are nothing but a mass delusion. Since the subject matter of the delusion in this case is extremely rabid, the patients might harm or even kill each other in abnormal ways, believing this to be the treatment for the disease. They might also give up hope and commit suicide together in the worst case. Oh god, don't let that be a frickin' premonition of what's to come. This influential delusional disorder, otherwise known as shared psychotic disorder, shows a particularly strong possibility of influencing close companions. Anyone who is going to contact the patients must be made to understand that the patients are under medical treatment and must be warned not to be influenced by the patient's delusions. Individuals who are likely to be easily influenced are the patient's family members and people who deeply care about the patients, such as boyfriends or girlfriends, or friends, like Keiichi being brought into Rena's delusions. Oh, that's interesting. Alright guys, so that will wrap up this episode. A lot of interesting information here. The whole thing about, you know, Rena's past and the delve into her psychosis, the maggots, and the fact that the maggots are actually a possible known thing that Takano knew about, which is crazy. And now this whole thing about people potentially hunting Rena down, and it seems like she might not be too far off the mark. It wasn't just delusions like we might think, but we'll see about that. So I'm super interested to see what happens next. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and be sure to stay tuned for the next one. Until next time, bye guys.